Welcome to the Customer Wins podcast, where business leaders discuss their secrets and techniques for helping their customers succeed and in turn grow their business.
Hi, I'm Rich Walker, the host of The Customer Wins, where I talk to business leaders about how they help their customers win and how their focus on customer experience leads to growth. Some of our past guests have included Adam Holt of Asset Map and Jonathan Miller of Parsonex. Today, I'm speaking with Louis Retief, co-founder and CEO of Hubly. And today's episode is brought to you by Quick, the leader in enterprise forms processing. When your business relies upon processing forms, don't waste your team's valuable time reviewing the forms. Instead, get Quick. Using our Form Extract API, simply submit your completed forms and get back clean, context-rich data that is 99.9% accurate. Visit quickforms.com to get started. Now, before I introduce today's guest, I want to give a really big thank you to Joe Moss of Pro Advisor Suite for introducing me to Louis and Hubly. Go check out proadvisorsuite.com to find deals on tech for RIAs. All right, I'm really excited to talk to Louis Retief. He's the co-founder and CEO of Hubly, a cutting-edge wealth tech company powering hundreds of financial advisory firms. At just 28 years old, only 4 years after starting Hubly, he's not only unleashed the power of effortless financial advisory, but has also guided his team through difficult challenges, creating a culture all about courage and integrity. Those are things I love. Louis brings a unique leadership style focused on empowering the Hubly team, lovingly known as Hubblers, and his commitment to personal growth has made Hubly's unlikely success story possible. This has allowed advisors and their back office teams to find the freedom to grow their businesses while delivering top-notch client service. Louis, welcome to the Customer Wins.
Rich, thank you for having me. Excited to be here today.
I think we're gonna have a great conversation. And if you haven't heard this podcast before, I talk with business leaders about what they're doing to help their customers win, how they built and deliver a great customer experience, and the challenges to growing their own company. Louis, we want to understand your business a little better. How does your company help people?
Yeah, so Rich, what I like to say is we'll help unleash the power of effortless financial advisory. Through the work that we do, we obviously work a lot with business leaders and also operations leaders who obviously deliver financial advice services to their customers. And I think generally speaking, when you get into running a business, you underestimate how difficult it is to actually grow a business, manage a team, create processes, and deliver the service you've always dreamt of delivering to your customers. And at Hubly, our goal is to help make that easier for you to do, to actually deliver on the promises and the high-touch service you want to deliver to your clients. And I think, I've thought a lot about what we truly do at Hubly, and the number one thing and the word that always comes to mind is freedom. Depending on the business owner and what their goal is, that changes. Maybe freedom to grow, freedom to take more time off and spend with their family, or if it's the operations leader who's actually delivering the services, is freedom of peace of mind, freedom to manage the team, freedom to sleep at night. And so this concept of freedom is very consistent and represented across our customer base when we talk to them about the value that Hubly provides. And so I think there's, this element of how difficult it is to run your business and how to scale it and to serve your customers. And what Hubly brings to our customers is that freedom to actually do what they want to do.
Louis, I love something that you just did here. You brought in both the technical aspect of how to get there with the core benefit of why to get there. And I don't think enough companies talk about that. They talk about what they do, the how they do it, but what are you getting out of it? I think we're freeing up people to do their best work. And that's not paperwork, right? And it sounds like you're doing the same thing. It's all about efficiency for your customers.
Yeah, and I think a lot about not even just the financial advisors or the business owners, but I think a lot about the back office administrative and support staff. Rich, we actually released what we call the Back Office Heroes campaign a while back. And it's actually just highlighting the incredible work that the back office workers do that is not fun work. It's, pushing paperwork. It's, manually downloading CSV files and data rekeying work. But that work is so important in order to deliver the incredible service and helping people achieve financial freedom or their financial goals. And that work needs to be recognized and hopefully made a lot easier.
Yeah, no, for sure. I've been a huge proponent of creating an efficient office, which is, I describe it this way: technology is the last decision. The first decision is, what is your process? What does your ideal process look like? And then it's to apply people to the process. And I don't think in terms of who you've already hired. I think in just terms of roles, because if you can assign the role, you can figure out who plays those roles best. So I want to understand your product a little bit better then, because it is process based, right? What is it you're actually helping people do and figure out?
Yeah, I think there's actually a component before even roles, and then which lead to processes, which then lead to the technology decision. It's funny, when my conversations with business owners, I actually go even one layer before that, which is, what is your culture at the firm right now?
Nice.
Who is involved in decision making? How is your team structured? Who is actually responsible? Who are other people making decisions? I, generally speaking, when a business owner hops on, the CEO of the firm hops on a sales call with me and they're like, I want to implement Hubly, the technology. I'm like, I hear you. Let's just back up for 1 second. Tell me about your team. Who else is involved in decision-making processes? What is the culture like right now? And who else leads at your team, right? And so I think, in its core essence, Hubly is about culture and habit change in the organization, which is, any technology implementation is going to fundamentally fail if that piece is not addressed and thought about. And so I think even a layer deeper than that is like where I generally have my conversations with owners. And Hubly is about the best practices and teaching those and implementing those that is going to actually fundamentally lead to long-term culture change in how your team works, operates, and services customers.
Man, that is so, so smart. I fully align with that. When I started my company, I had already defined the core tenets of my company culture, because what I was looking at was everywhere I worked, I didn't feel like I was getting the most out of me, and I never felt like they would fully utilize my capabilities. So I kept asking myself, what would do that for me? And I came up with these 4 cultural tenets that drive my own performance and therefore drive my team's performance. And you're so right. When people are aligned with that culture and they understand it, they perform at their best levels, they do their best work, they're highly engaged, they love what they do, they treat each other well. So that's really, really awesome that you're talking about that. Are there components of your product that therefore bring culture in and reinforce it or help define it?
It's a good question, Rich. And I'd say not yet. It's actually a very difficult piece to do. And we've had to have, and this is where we're actually revisiting our own processes, right? Like we try to eat our own dog food quite a lot, right?
Yeah.
Where like if we're giving this type of advice, we actually, there's a mirror which reflects right back at you, be like, are you doing this as an organization? And I think we don't have anything built into the software today for that. We use humans to bridge that gap, right? We have a human-driven sales process. We have each the firm gets matched with a workflow or what we call a process management consultant on our team who actually addresses these components when they get started. And we're currently looking at how do we start productizing this piece of the service that we provide, because it is inefficient and it doesn't scale extremely well, but it is very valuable to the customer. And I'm glad that you even mentioned it, because every business has the exact same challenge. And I'd be curious, Rich, when you've addressed this problem, I'm assuming you've probably thought about, depending on those tenets that you implemented, the way you address your process and actually implement better processes probably changes fundamentally. That's at least what I've seen internally. Depending on the cultural and the mindset that people are coming with, the processes that are implemented are actually fundamentally different in the end of the day, depending on those cultural elements. And I'm assuming you've
100%.
experienced that as well.
100%. Yeah. So, I mean, look, I think of it like in marketing, you want to have your core message drive the rest of your messaging, right? Culture drives how your people behave, how they interact, how they act out into the world. In fact, over the years, I mean, I'm in year 22 of my business, but 3 different times we hired outside consultants to go survey our customers. And the response we got was a reflection of our culture. They would say things like, we love working with them. They're so fun. They enjoy what they do, which is one of our tenets. Or they're always responsible and they call us back and they fulfill what they said they're going to do. Their software works. Their service is great, And I do think it does change how you fundamentally approach how you define your processes, because a lot of people, when they get into a management role, they think of people as resources, not people. You want to lead people and manage resources. A resource is more like a tool. And you want to treat people with that kind of respect. Well, that means you have to understand what they want, what their goals are, what they're aligned best to do in their world. So even if you write a really great job description, I'm super flexible on how it's actually applied to the person doing it. But if you're going to build this into your product, you're taking on something that I think is super important, but also really, really hard, because culture doesn't evolve or change overnight. And a lot of people, I think if you started here, and I'm not trying to tell you how to build your product because have never used it, but I think if you started with, do you know what your culture is and can you write it down and define it, that would give people clarity in which they can then say, how do I now build the process?
Yeah, and I think that is part of our growth challenge, right? Is we found a lot of success with our early adopters or firms that have already figured this out, right? They have an incredible culture, they have a strong team, they have individual leaders that now it's just about the tool and implementing it. And I think now it becomes, how do you actually help the other firms that have not figured that out yet, as like the next part of our growth journey, which I think is definitely a challenge. And going back to what you said about people and helping them succeed, something I think a lot about, and this is something that I even have conversations with our clients about, is like, how do you measure success? Or like, even if the perfect piece of technology existed, it did everything you hoped and dreamed it was going to do, like, how are you going to measure the success or the outcome for that? Like, and it always boggles my mind how little people are able to answer that question and actually have thought about the outcome that they're looking to achieve with the technology. And that's something I've found internally, is getting really, really dialed in about the success measure and what you're trying to accomplish. And funny enough, if you get that wrong, the things that you end up building and the time you end up spending is like actually wasted sometimes. Obviously, it's part of the learning journey. But I think spending a lot more time on that. And I've, at some points, people have come to us, they're like, we want to buy Hubly, but there's just no clarity in what they're trying to achieve with Hubly. I've actually recommended not buying the software, because I just know they're going to waste their money, they're going to waste our time in implementing it, and then ultimately we're going to have a unhappy customer. And so I'd way rather tell people, hey, go figure this out and come back to us. And we've had a lot of people come back to us, like, we've now done that work, we know exactly what we're trying to accomplish. And this gets a little bit more into the actual technology, which I'm happy to dive into, and how we implement Hubly. But that's a very big key component of how we try to work with our customers.
No, that is just good business, Louis. I love that. And I mean, you're showing yourself to be so introspective and cognizant of how things should work or could work better for yourselves and therefore for your customers. So you're the right person to build this kind of product. That's pretty awesome to see. Let me ask you something else, because you had said you look internally and say you're reevaluating your own processes. And if you go through this work as a CEO today to say, hey, what's your culture and how do you understand it and how would you articulate it? How do you then grow? How do you enable other people on your team to do the same thing and have that masterful presence to do it?
It's tough. I do not have the silver bullet for this yet, and I think I'll be a billionaire when I do figure it out. But it's constantly evolving, and I think it's interesting. Where I try to spend a lot of time with the team is, one, we spend a lot of time not just defining our values as a company, but I actually spend a lot of time with at least the people that I'm able to work with directly on the team, and helping them understand their own values, because your values doesn't necessarily always equal company values. There's sometimes overlap, but actually spending time defining your own values is a really important part of the process. And so we've done quite a few leadership offsite retreats where there's 3 common conversations that we've had, or activities that we've run, which is like understanding your own values and your own value system, and how that sometimes applies to the organization or influences the organization. 2, what are like your conditions of fulfillment in the workplace? And so actually helping people understand, what are their conditions, right? How do they want to show up in relation to others? And the third one is helping people identify their growth edges. Where are they hitting up against a wall that is affecting how they show up and actually grow in the workplace. And I've actually found that a lot of people's blockers for growth is actually, generally speaking, from past workplace trauma, something that they struggled with at the previous workplace, or had a boss or a manager that affected them in not necessarily a good way, or things from childhood that are affecting how they show up. And so helping people be quite self-aware about what are their own blockers that are impeding how they show up in the workplace are like three concepts that I've been experimenting a lot with and spending quite a bit of time thinking about and trying to help actual individuals, leaders develop at Hubly.
No, I love that. I don't know if you know, but I wrote a book on how to change. It's a 4-step method of how to create change for yourself. And it was published in 2011. And I feel like I even lost a customer because I published the book, in the sense that they felt like, oh, you're not serious about your software business. You're going to become a coach or a speaker or something like that. And the reality is, as a leader, I think you have an obligation for self-improvement in order to improve your business. And what you just talked about of helping your team improve, I mean, that's the best catalyst for success that you can put in front of them. It's not money, it's not time, it's self-improvement, in my opinion.
Yeah.
No, I think that's awesome that you're looking at that. I wanted to go back to another question I had because I didn't think I got it. Who is your core buyer?
Yeah, so we have 3 core buyers at Hubly, and I can maybe talk about a little bit how a buyer gets started with our product. So we have 3 core buyers. The first is who we call the solo business owner. It's an individual who's generally running their small advisory firm, anywhere from 50 to 100 million in AUM, servicing 25 to 50-ish clients, and trying to serve them as efficiently as possible. You're a solo business owner, they might hire an assistant or a virtual assistant to help them a little bit to run their firm. The second core buyer is who we call the lead financial advisor. They are generally the advisor that, yes, they do advising, but they're also responsible for the technology. They could also be the business owner. Generally, these individuals are most commonly found in advisory businesses, generally between 200 to about 500 million in AUM, servicing several hundred clients. And they're responsible for the operations of the wealth management and making sure the services are delivered to their customer. And our third core customer, which is honestly my favorite customer to work with, not that I'm being biased or anything, but I just love working with them because they're super nerdy like I am, is we call them the operations guru. They're generally in a COO role or a operations leadership role, and they are generally responsible for making sure the advisors on the team are as efficient as possible, that the back office is operating fluidly, and that the customer service and support is absolutely dialed. They're generally found in your little bit of your bigger advisory firms, 500 to a billion plus in AUM as the general size. So those are kind of like the 3 core buyers. Now, doesn't matter which buyer you are, the way you get started with Hubly is actually quite similar. When you think about Hubly, is in its simplest state, Hubly is an operating system for your business. Now, this operating system is extremely flexible and customizable to the problem that you're experiencing. And so the big part of how we get customers started is we help identify what is their biggest problem. And then we apply what we call a use case to that specific problem. And Hubly has now built our flexible and custom operating system. We've built some very standard use cases to address a lot of the core problems that most of your firms experience. I can give you an exact example. A buyer might come into our sales process and be like, our biggest problem is downloading CSVs from our CRM in order to figure out who we have scheduled in for a meeting and who has not yet been scheduled in for a meeting, and to figure out what sort of recurring schedule everyone is on using our tags in our CRM. It takes several hours, and our administrators are manually running these CSV spreadsheets and then manually running the scheduling process. What we do at Hubly is we have a an automation rule where we can actually pull in your calendar system information if you use Calendly or Schedule Once. And we can say, hey, the last time you met with Rich was 6 months ago. It is now time to meet with him again because he's an A client and you meet with all your A clients every 6 months. And we apply this workflow, or what we call process use case, to that problem. And we have over 167 use cases that we address. We have some big core buckets that we've built for, but that's like the general concept of how we get customers started. Is we figure out who's the buyer, and then what is their core use case that they need solved. And then our goal is to get in with that immediate use case, provide value for that. And then the natural question all of our customers ask is like, okay, well, now how do I apply this to the next use case or the next problem they have? And then it becomes just a process of expanding their usage of the software.
Are you training them on how to do this for themselves, or do they always come back to you and say, hey, we have another problem to solve, help us use your product?
It's more of a train the trainer, right? Like our goal is to definitely not help them each time. We actually have an entire templates library of all these use cases where the best practices are documented. We have, training videos for all the different use cases. And so the first one is normally the hardest, right? Because they have to learn the best practice. But once they understand the concepts, the best practices, it's then very natural to apply that to the next thing. And so that each one gets faster and faster. And generally speaking, we only help on the first or the second one, and then they're off on their own, implementing more and more.
Nice. Do you think of yourselves a little bit like Zapier, or if this, then that?
I would, comparatively, I more think of us as a Monday.com or an Asana. Now, if you compare us to those software products, they're industry agnostic, right? They've built project management for anyone. They've built, marketing or sales CRM for anyone. Now, our general thesis, from a market opportunity standpoint, is that those generic industry agnostic tools are not good enough and have not built for the use cases that are prevalent in a highly regulated service environment, which is what financial services is. There's a number of use cases and compliance and audit pieces that they just have not built for and probably won't build for. And so there's a unique enough value proposition and need in this vertical that we are solving through our use case operating system.
No, I love that. I love that. I mean, we're highly specific, obviously, because we built the forms library for wealth management. Yeah. And people say, well, will you do that for real estate? No, I don't want to be in real estate. So give me just one more thing I'm going to ask before I jump into another question. Give me a success story. Like, how have you impacted your customer? Like, did they save a bunch of time? Did they not hire somebody? Did they scale and grow? I'm really curious.
Yeah, there's quite a few case studies on our website. It really depends on the goal of the business owner, right? Going back to the concept of freedom. I'll give you a couple of examples. We have James Phillips. He runs and operates Phillips Financial Advisory. When he implemented Hubly, he basically 3x'd his AUM in basically 18 months. And his biggest challenge was, how do I onboard new advisors as efficiently as possible so that they execute and deliver the experience that he already knew worked? And so he brought on more advisors, and then he built a back office that basically supports those advisors.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's one example. And there's a couple other ones. But, the other very common one is your existing team can significantly increase their servicing capacity, right? And this is very common for advisory teams. Like, not every advisory firm out there wants to grow. The business has actually been running for better part of 15, 20 years. And like, they're up to here with just maintaining existing client relationships. And they're at the point of, how do we actually increase profit and better service existing clients without having to hire more staff, right? Because as soon as you hire more staff, then your profit margins come down, and then then you need to focus on growing again. And so it's the second very core value prop is obviously efficiency and helping increase the capacity of the existing team to service their clients. And there's a couple for that.
There's something hidden in there that I also really love about what you're doing. You're helping codify their process So it's less dependent on any one person in the organization or them being on vacation or whatever. You're building a system infrastructure that the company can then just operate, which frees up the owner, especially if they want to sell their business or do succession planning in the future.
I'm so happy you mentioned that and read in between the lines there, because that is, we haven't written the case study on it yet, but I can anecdotally say there's a firm that worked with Hubly and they significantly increased the multiple that they sold their business by because they had Hubly implemented.
Nice.
We don't have a case study to back that up yet, but the anecdotal, story that they provided to me was that, and it's that exact reason, right? The business wasn't reliant on the business owner being there. The business owner could get hit by a truck tomorrow or by a bus, and the business would keep running. And so really reducing that key person risk. And I think the interesting piece of that is Hubly's very good at showing you who on the team, your back office support team, is actually doing all the work. And so the acquiring firm was able to quickly see XYZ employees are actually the ones that are fundamentally important to the success of the business. And they were able to really value, which of those employees are very important to the acquisition and the success of that acquisition. And so, very analogous opportunity there. But given there's a lot of consolidation that's going to happen in the RA space, I think the exit opportunities and helping people increase the value of their business is huge.
Well, yeah. And the fundamental goal of creating freedom means that you rely upon others, and that includes processes to perform the work. I love that. I love that. Okay. So look, I want to switch gears. We're running out of time here. I love to talk about artificial intelligence. And while you're not necessarily delivering generative AI type stuff, I'm just curious how you see AI impacting your customer experience or even your product in the future.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about this because there's obviously a lot of opportunities. Since we've released our product into market, we've helped advisory firms complete over 2 million tasks for clients and over 500,000 workflows. And so just, through that data, we've learned a lot about what it actually takes to deliver scalable financial advice to customers, right? And what is the inefficient and efficient things to do. We've done a number of hackathons trying to utilize that information to figure out, what are the opportunities for Hubly to leverage AI. The two items that I'll mention, and I think this can be broadly applied to, other software companies as well, or even financial advisors. The first is getting a customer started. Right now, I'm having a conversation with, let's just, Rich, the customer, and I'm trying to read in between the lines to understand what is your use case problem. We've actually collected data from early days on the conversational information that happened in the call, and then what use case was actually recommended to that customer. And so imagine instead of, you having to have a conversation with Louis or a salesperson, you could just have a conceptual conversation with a bot or an AI when you get started with Hubly and be like, my name is Rich, this is a little bit about my business. Here are my current capacity or challenges I'm experiencing. Here are my goals. And then we can actually recommend, here are the best use cases to actually start with. And so we've experimented a little bit with that, and we actually have quite a lot of the information to make that possible.
Nice.
The second piece that we've seen and collected a lot of information and data around is before a workflow is activated for a client, something as simple as a trade request or a conversion or an estate plan review that then is routed to your team, the advisor who is generally in conversation with the client is normally taking a note in Hubly or in their CRM. And based on the workflow data that we have, we can actually look at, based on the note that the advisor has provided on the contextual information from the call with their client, we can recommend what are the most appropriate workflows and additional tasks that need to be added because of that unique situation to the client. And we built some, early hackathon betas where this actually works. We just haven't rolled it out or implemented yet because there's a number of of things we still need to work out, but we're sitting on a treasure trove of information and data that I think we can really help make these advisory firms a ton more efficient. And those are some initial applications that we're thinking of in terms of Hubly today.
No, that's awesome. I really, really like the way of thinking there. You had said something earlier in this conversation about helping people build the right habits. And so I want to actually mention, I had a guest on this podcast. His name is Mike Jalonen, and his product is called Habit Driven. And it's an app on your phone that helps you track and manage your habits, and it's AI driven. He's white labeling it. Maybe you guys should talk and figure out if that's something that you could incorporate somehow to help your clients build those habits that Hubly's helping reinforce and create.
That's a great idea. I will touch base. I'll check out that podcast.
Yeah, no, interesting things he's doing. So Louis, look, we have to wrap this up, and I have another question for you. But before I ask it, I want to help people connect with you. So what's the best way for people to find you?
Yeah, best way for people to find us is you can jump on our website. You can either schedule a call directly on our website with myself or someone else on our sales team. Will jump on that call to talk to you guys about, talk to you about Hubly. We call it a strategy call because, and it's not a discovery call, and we really don't try to sell you on that first call. We actually try to understand what is your use case problem. And the recommendation might not be to implement Hubly. And so, we've had a lot of folks just hop on a strategy call to learn more and see if there's a good fit for their business and their needs. And so I highly encourage you to schedule that call. Alternatively, anyone can always email me directly at louis@myhubly.com. That's LOUIS@MYHUBLY.com. And I'd love to touch base if this was an interesting conversation, either as a potential partner for Hubly or a potential customer. You can touch base with me directly.
Oh, that's perfect. You guys do something, I think we do something very similar. We call it the idea meeting to have an initial discussion. We want to understand what the challenge is, and we'll say no. We'll tell you to go talk to this other company or something if it's not the right fit. So I love your attitude and your approach to this. All right, here comes my last question. Who has had the biggest impact on your company's growth and success so far?
It's a tough question, Rich, and there's a lot of people, different people that come to mind. I think in an effort not to mention all of them, but someone who has recently had a big impact in just, I think, my approach and philosophy towards building culture and being a better leader has actually been my partner. Her name is Devin Christie. Devin is actually a medical doctor, and she's a trauma therapist as well, and has actually brought in this lens to looking at people and leadership from a psychological standpoint, actually, helping identify where people's growth edges are, what is actually holding them back from succeeding in their role, and how do you actually implement better culture, leadership training for those people. And, in the last little bit, she's really been a very supportive partner in helping understand the medical psychology side of humans that has been very powerful in how I actually approach leadership training and actually leading people. I've actually, through the work that I've done with her, I've actually called it, every single person has the potential for what I'm calling inner leadership intelligence. And it's actually just your goal as their leader to help them understand that and become super in tune with that, and helping them identify what is their inner leadership potential and intelligence and how to develop it. And so that's someone I'll mention just because of how prevalent it is currently in my leadership journey. But there are many other folks that I can definitely mention as well.
No, I love that. This is why I asked the starting question of how do you help people, not what do you do, but how do you help people? Because at the core of who we are as humans, it's about helping each other. We are so dependent on each other, and I applaud you for wanting to understand how people work better. That's great. I want to give a big thank you to Louis Retief, CEO of Hubly, for being on this episode of The Customer Wins. Go check out Hubly's website at myhubly, MYHUBLY.com. And don't forget to check out Quick at quickforms.com, where we make processing forms easy. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion, and will click the like button, share this with someone, and subscribe to our channels for future episodes of The Customer Wins. Thank you so much for joining me today, Louis.
Thank you so much, Rich. Huge kudos to you and the team for putting us together. I really like your approach of how deeply conversational the work is that you do with your customers and the conversations. I listened to quite a few of your podcasts before this, and yeah, that was an incredible experience. So thank you for that.
Thanks for listening to the Customer Wins podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.